I never chose the path of silence lightly. The blood of the lavender that stains our fields is not only mine to bear, it belongs to a legacy of defiance, of standing against injustices that could have consumed us all. I was not merely a frightened daughter of fate. I was a woman who dared to challenge the powers that threatened our very existence. Antoine's jealousy was but a spark in the grand conflagration of betrayal and secret wars. And you, my dearest Elodie, must know that this family has always been entwined in a struggle much greater than personal sorrow, a struggle for liberation, for truth, and for the right to love without fear. The letter my mother left me and the truths it concealed. What awaits me now, I do not know. I always thought that Paris held everything I needed, the ceaseless hum of creativity, the clatter of cafe conversations, and the vibrant pulse of a city that never slept. At 28, I had built a life as a freelance journalist in the Marais, chasing stories and unraveling human truths with every keystroke. Yet nothing could have prepared me for the day a single phone call shattered the delicate balance I had crafted, a call informing me that my grandmother Geneviève was gravely ill. In that moment, my world shifted. I knew I had to return to Provence and the family lavender farm Les Champs Élysées to face memories I had long buried. The journey back was surreal. As the train slipped through the sun-dappled countryside, a quiet melancholy embraced me. Fields of lavender stretched out like a living sea, their purple hues intermingling with the deep golden glow of the Provençal sun. The rustic charm of the region, with its old stone farmhouses and ancient trees swaying in the gentle breeze, offered both solace and an undercurrent of latent sorrow. I couldn't help but wonder how many secrets were immersed beneath those fragrant rows, waiting to be unearthed. When I arrived at the farm, the contrast was stark. Gone was the frenetic pulse of Paris. Instead, a deliberate, almost hypnotic silence prevailed. I stepped from the car into a world where every breath was infused with the heady scent of lavender, a scent that instantly transported me back to childhood, memories of laughter and hushed whispers in the twilight. Standing in the doorway of the stone farmhouse, I hesitated, the weight of the past pressing down on me as heavily as the midsummer heat. Inside, I found my father Jean-Luc in the living room. His sorrowful eyes, framed by lines of regret and fatigue, met mine in a silent plea for understanding. "Elodie," he said softly, his voice barely carrying through the still air, "I knew you would come." I could see his hands tremble as he offered a tentative smile, a smile meant to comfort, but failing to mask the pain behind it. He had devoted his life to protecting me, yet I sensed that his protective barrier was woven from threads of secrets too heavy to bear. The family's silence in that moment was punctuated only by the distant ticking of the old clock, a relentless reminder that time and truth could not be stopped. Upstairs, the remnants of my mother's presence stirred in the dusty corners of her old room, untouched for years. With trembling fingers, I began to sort through a box of keepsakes, a collection of photographs, brittle letters, and stained love notes that echoed with voices from a past long silenced. As I sifted through these relics, an envelope delicately yellowed by time slipped free from a leather-bound diary. Its neatly penned words scrawled in a looping hand sent a shiver down my spine. "Je ne peux plus vivre avec ce secret. Il faut que tu saches la vérité, Jean-Luc. Le sang de lavande me hante." The letter was a turning point, a confessional message directed at my father, hinting at truths I had never been allowed to touch. My heart pounded in my chest as I read and reread the words, each line casting a spell of both dread and irresistible curiosity. Had my mother Isabelle been entangled in something far darker than the official story had ever revealed? With every word, my yearning for truth warred with a deep fear of uncovering a past that might shatter the fragile peace I clung to. That very evening, as twilight draped the sky in somber purples and dusky blues, I sought out my father. His brooding presence in the quiet kitchen, hunched over a cup of lukewarm tea, was both familiar and alien. "Papa," I began hesitantly, "I found something. A letter in Mama's room." I need to know what happened all those years ago. His eyes darted away, and for a moment the old hurt and regret he'd long suppressed flashed like lightning in their depths. "Some things are better left buried, Elodie," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. But even as he spoke, I knew that I could not indeed, would not ignore the silent summons of the past. That secret promise left unfulfilled and laden with guilt had pushed him into silence for decades. The air between us became thick with tension reminiscent of the oppressive summer heat outside. Later that night, unable to sleep, I wandered the corridors of my mother's room where twilight played haunting tricks on the old photographs and relics. The faded image of my mother, a radiant smile captured in a moment of defiant joy, haunted me, and her eyes seemed to plead silently for the truth. I traced the outline of a particular photo with my fingertip, an image of her beside a man whose face was unfamiliar yet unsettlingly important. A faint suspicion crept into my mind. Could he be linked to the mysterious phrase in the letter, "Le sang de Lavender," the phrase echoing a metaphor of blood and betrayal among the tranquil lavender fields, hinted at a dark chapter that had been meticulously concealed. In the days that followed, the farm became an intricate tapestry of hidden memories and reluctant confessions. I was determined to untangle the threads of my mother's past, even as each question stirred a new storm of conflict within me. The more I probed, the more I sensed that the truth was intertwined with the very fabric of this land, the same land that had both nurtured and cursed my family for generations. Every curling vine, every rustling row of lavender seemed to murmur secrets of forbidden love, political rebellion, and a betrayal so profound that silence had become its sanctuary. As I prepared to leave the farm for a brief stint in the local town to gather additional pieces of the puzzle, shadows seemed to lengthen around me like dark omens. I encountered Sophie, a kind yet sorrowful woman who had once been my mother's dearest friend. In a trembling voice, she hinted at a time when Isabelle's ideals had burned brighter than the Provençal sun, a time when passion and peril walked hand in hand. Isabelle was a force of nature. Sophie confided, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. But there were those who would see her brilliance extinguished if it threatened their own ambitions. Her words, laced with regret, left me with more questions than answers. I returned to the farmhouse under a crisp autumn sky, the heat of summer replaced by a coolness that foretold approaching storms. My determination had hardened into resolve, a resolve to confront not only the ghosts of my mother's past, but also the hidden fears of my father and grandmother. I knew my journey had just begun, and with every passing moment the lavender fields whispered ominously, as if warning me that the truth, as irresistible as it was, might come at a price. That night, as I sat by the window watching the silvered moon cast its light over the endless rows of lavender, my heart beat with a wild mixture of fear and hope. I realized that uncovering the secrets entombed in these fields might not only reveal the fate of my mother, but also the future of my family. In that quiet, haunting hour, I made a silent vow I would dive deep into this legacy of sorrow and silence, even if it meant unraveling the very soul of who we were. And so, with the bitter taste of uncertainty on my tongue and the fragrance of blood-stained lavender lingering in the air, I prepared to embark on a journey that would change my life forever. The promise of unbridled truth beckoned me forward, and I knew that whatever lay ahead, the echoes of the past would sound louder than ever before. I awoke the next morning, the pallid light of an overcast autumn sky seeping into my window. The storm of emotions that had brewed the previous night showed no signs of abating. Instead, it had intensified into a resolute determination. I had vowed to peel away every layer of deceit, to trace the roots of our family's dark legacy hidden among the endless rows of lavender. That morning, I set out with a singular purpose to uncover the secrets my mother had taken to her grave. My first stop was the small town where Sophie, my mother's closest friend, resided. In a modest cafe with creaking wooden chairs and faded memories, Sophie met me with eyes heavy with sorrow and withheld truths. Over a cup of bitter coffee, she recounted how Isabelle was once a beacon of rebellious passion, a woman whose fierce ideals shook the very foundation of a society steeped in silence and control. Sophie's voice trembled as she described the dangerous liaisons and political intrigues that had ensnared my mother. She revealed that on one fateful night, my mother had borne witness to a brutal murder, an unknown man captured in an old photograph I had discovered, killed in an act born of jealousy and raw ambition. Sophie confided Isabelle wanted to free herself from a world that demanded silence, but in doing so, she made powerful enemies. Her words stoked the embers of my resolve, each revelation intensifying both my grief and my desire for the truth. Armed with Sophie's guarded testimony, I pored over the relics my mother had left behind. In a battered leather journal, cryptic yet heartfelt entries hinted at a night when the calm beauty of the lavender fields transformed into a stage for unspeakable violence. Each written line was laced with fear, a promise that the blood of those fields would someday demand justice. It wasn't long before my suspicions began to converge on one man, Antoine, the suave and calculating figure who had once wooed my mother with the promise of love, only to reveal a darker agenda fueled by envy. Determined to confront these buried truths, I returned to the farmhouse. The stone walls, bathed in the lingering aroma of lavender, seemed to breathe an age-old sorrow. In the dim light of dusk, I found my father, Jean-Luc, alone in the dining room, his gaze fixed on nothing yet burdened by everything. "Papa," I said, my voice steady yet trembling with pent-up questions. "I need you to tell me everything about Mama about that night." For a long, heavy moment, silence reigned. Then, with the weight of decades pressing down on him, he finally spoke. His voice was low and painful. "Your mother was more than you remember. She was fierce, fighting against forces that threatened everything she held dear. That night, when a man was murdered just outside these fields, I was caught in a web of decisions. I tried to protect her and you, but in protecting you, I silenced the truth." His confession was a torrent of regret, every word a spill of sorrow that I had long sensed. Before I could press further, the door creaked open and Geneviève appeared, a seemingly delicate woman whose eyes shone with a steely resolve. As if emerging from the shadows of a forgotten memory, she commanded the room with a presence that belied her frailty. "Some secrets, Elodie, are kept, not to imprison us, but to spare us from a fate too cruel to bear." She intoned her voice firm yet laden with sadness. I could no longer contain my anger and desperation. "How could you let our lives be dictated by lies and silence?" I demanded, my voice echoing against the old walls. For a long, agonizing minute, Geneviève looked away as though wrestling with her own painful demons. When she finally spoke, her confession was like a slow, deliberate unraveling of a tightly wound thread, revealing that my aunt had been compromised, that Isabelle had been forced into silence. "I did what I had to do," she whispered, "to keep the family safe, even if it meant burying truth beneath the soil of this land." In that moment, the fractures in my heart widened, fusing my pain with the raw agony of betrayal. That charged exchange fueled my need for closure. My investigation soon led me to an abandoned vineyard on the outskirts of town, a place that, despite its picturesque facade, carried an unsettling aura of menace. In the midst of twisted vines under a turbulent sky, I encountered Pierre, a gaunt, somber man whose eyes held the secrets of many untold stories. He spoke in hushed tones about that fateful night. "I was there when it happened," he confided, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. "I saw the look in Antoine's eyes, the envy, not for love, but for the power he believed he deserved. He couldn't stand the fact that Isabelle would not be silenced, and so in his rage, he orchestrated a murder that has tainted these fields ever since." Every word from Pierre was a shard of ice in my veins, solidifying a terrible clarity. Antoine was the architect of this tragedy, the man whose clever smile had once hidden a heart of malice. Later that night, the sky broke open with a ferocity that matched the turmoil raging inside me. I gathered every scrap of evidence, the diary entries, the fragmented confessions, and the photographs that bore witness to forbidden secrets, and resolved to confront Antoine directly. Under a torrential downpour, I made my way to his sprawling vineyard. The estate, illuminated briefly by flashes of lightning, looked like an opulent prison where beauty and terror intertwined. I found Antoine in the garden, his silhouette stark against the blurred backdrop of rain. "Antoine," I said, my voice steady with an urgency born of both grief and determination. "Why did you let jealousy dictate such a cruel fate?" His eyes, long accustomed to deceit, flickered momentarily with a trace of vulnerability. "I loved her," he replied, his tone a conflicted mix of bitterness and sorrow, "but that love turned into a poison that I couldn't control. When I saw her defy the darkness around us, I was consumed by a rage I cannot fully explain." His confession, raw and fractured, confirmed everything I had pieced together. He had murdered that man in a jealous frenzy, and in doing so destroyed a piece of the past that could have redeemed him. The climax of our confrontation came as the distant sound of sirens crashed over the storm's roar. Police cars swept onto the property, and within moments, Antoine's world crumbled as officers cuffed him in the rain. His final shattered glance met mine, a silent admission of his guilt and the ruin his choices had brought upon us all. Returning to the farmhouse in the aftermath of the storm, the air felt strangely cleansed, even as the scent of wet earth mingled with lavender. My father's eyes met mine with a quiet relief and an enduring sorrow, while Genevieve's once iron facade softened into a fragile, resigned smile, as though she sensed that the cycle of secrets had finally run its course. In that bittersweet silence, I understood that while the truth had long been hidden beneath layers of pain and fear, it was now free to breathe and perhaps to heal. With Antoine's arrest, the bitter strife that had haunted our family was poised on the cusp of reconciliation. I resolved to transform this very legacy, this blood-stained history of lavender fields, into a story of truth, resilience, and the possibility of forgiveness. I began to compile everything, determined to write a chronicle that honored my mother's indomitable spirit and exposed the shadows that had once ruled our lives. The story now mine to tell promised not only to shed light on our darkest secrets, but also to kindle hope for a future reborn from the ruins of the past. In the quiet days that followed, as I wandered amidst the purple haze of the fields where our destinies had been sealed, I felt a profound transformation stirring within me. The lavender, once a symbol of our family's sorrow, had begun to reveal a new facet, a reminder that even the most painful truths, when embraced, could clear the path to renewal. I chose to remain on the farm not as a captive of history, but as its chronicler, the one who dared to find beauty in both loss and redemption. Now as the sun dips low over the ancient stone farmhouse, I stand amid the whispering lavender, a living testament to the resilience of love and truth. The echoes of revenge have been replaced by whispers of forgiveness, a promise that the wounds of the past, though deep, can eventually give way to healing and hope. And so I move forward, carrying the legacy of my mother's passion and sacrifice, determined to let the truth, like the endless fields of lavender, bloom forever into a future redefined by its own strength. In the hushed aftermath of Antoine's arrest, the world around me seemed to exhale a long-held breath, a tentative peace, settling like dew on the lavender blooms. Yet even as dawn broke with a fragile promise of renewal, I sensed that the wounds of our family's past, though slowly mending, were far from healed. The trial unfolded with a stark finality. Antoine's confession, raw and conflicted, had sealed his fate. Yet, as I watched him led away in cuffs beneath a melancholy sky, I knew that this was merely the closing of one chapter in a story that was as tangled as the roots beneath our ancient lavender fields. I returned to the farmhouse, its stone walls echoing with the memories of lost time. The arrest had cast a long shadow over our household, forcing us all, my father, Geneviève, and myself, to confront long-suppressed truths. My father, Jean-Luc, wore his sorrow like a heavy mantle as he sat by the flickering light of the hearth. His eyes, once as turbulent as late summer storms, now revealed a deep-seated remorse, and a tentative hope for atonement. In hushed evenings over tea that had long lost its warmth, he began to speak of nights filled with heartache and decisions made under the crushing weight of duty. He confessed that his silence had not been born of cowardice alone, but of a desperate wish to shield me from a truth too bitter for a child's delicate spirit. But the most profound revelation came unexpectedly. While rummaging through the attic one rain-soaked afternoon, an act born of a need to organize old memories and clear the clutter of relentless nostalgia, I discovered a hidden compartment within an antique armoire. Inside lay a bundle of faded papers tied together with a fraying ribbon, and nestled among them a sealed envelope addressed in my mother's familiar hand. My heart trembled as I broke the fragile seal. The letter that unfolded before my eyes was not merely a final farewell. It was a confession, a manifesto of love and rebellion, and a plea for understanding. My mother's words leapt off the page with a vigor that defied the passage of decades. I never chose the path of silence lightly. The blood of the lavender that stains our fields is not only mine to bear, it belongs to a legacy of defiance, of standing against injustices that could have consumed us all. I was not merely a frightened daughter of fate. I was a woman who dared to challenge the powers that threatened our very existence. Antoine's jealousy was but a spark in the grand conflagration of betrayal and secret wars. And you, my dearest Elodie, must know that this family has always been entwined in a struggle much greater than personal sorrow, a struggle for liberation, for truth, and for the right to love without fear. The letter continued to reveal that my mother had once been deeply involved in a radical underground movement, a movement that fought against corruption and tyranny. Her passion for justice had burned fiercely, even as the cost of that rebellion cascaded down to her final tragic moments. In her words, I heard the echo of a cause that transcended personal tragedy, a noble quest to right profound wrongs, even if it meant her silence and eventual demise. I was stunned. The woman I had always worn in my heart as the gentle, mysterious absence in my life was in truth a warrior who had sacrificed everything for a vision of a better world. Tears escaped unbidden as I wandered the lavender fields, the golden afternoon light painting the endless rows with a bittersweet hue of memory and renewal. Each blossom, heavy with the scent of hope and heartache, seemed to carry the weight of my mother's secrets and her boundless courage. I began to understand that the silence which had suffocated our family was not solely the result of fear or protection, but an intricate tapestry woven from duty, love, and rebellion. That evening I sought out my father in the quiet solitude of the farmhouse's courtyard. The air was cool and redolent with the perfume of lavender mingled with lingering rain. With the letter clutched close to my chest, I asked him about the radical days I had only now glimpsed through my mother's words. His eyes, brimming with regret and aching with the knowledge of long-hidden truths, slowly softened. "I knew deep down that your mother was fighting more than just personal demons," he murmured. "I tried, oh, how I tried to shelter you from those dangerous passions. I believed that by burying the truth, I could spare you the flames of that eternal struggle. But perhaps in doing so, I extinguished the very light that once made her so remarkable." Our shared grief mingled with newfound understanding, forging an unspoken bond between us. For the first time, I saw in my father not the stoic figure burdened by silence, but a man who had sacrificed his own happiness to protect a flame that lit a darkened world. In that moment, gratitude and sorrow danced side by side, for both of us had paid dearly for a legacy of secrets. In the following weeks, as Genevieve's condition worsened, I found solace in chronicling everything: the conversations in whispered tones, the letter of defiance hidden in the attic, and the turbulent emotions that swelled like the rising tide. With each word that flowed onto my pages, I began to heal. The murder, the betrayals, and the silence were no longer just sources of unease. They were testimonies of lives lived in the shadows, daring to reach for a truth that in its own way was beautiful. The day my grandmother passed away was overcast and laden with a quiet inevitability, as though the skies themselves mourned the secrets she took to her grave. At her funeral, I caught fleeting glances of remorse and understanding in the eyes of those who had known her, the silent acknowledgement that she, too, had been part of a deep ocean of pain and duty. With Genevieve's final breath, an era closed, leaving behind not only heartbreak, but also a whispered promise that the truth would someday be told. Now, standing amidst the purple expanse of our family's land, the past and present merged. Behind me, the farmhouse glowed softly under the setting sun, its stones etched with stories of sorrow and defiance. In front of me, fields of lavender swayed in a gentle breeze, each bloom a testament to resilience. I realized that I no longer had to choose between revenge and forgiveness, between silencing the past and embracing its lessons. Instead, I would honor my mother's memory and our shared legacy by telling our story in its unvarnished truth. I began to write my book a chronicle that would weave together threads of betrayal, passion, and ultimate redemption. With every sentence, I reclaimed a part of myself that had been lost in the labyrinth of suppressed secrets. And as the ink flowed, so did a new resolve, a promise that the blood-stained lavender blossoms would one day bloom in peace, their fragrance a lullaby to both sorrow and hope. In that quiet communion with history and the land, I finally understood what I must do. I would transform the echoes of revenge into the whispers of healing. The legacy of our family, with all its pain and passion, would serve not as a burden, but as a bridge, a connection between the fallen past and the promise of tomorrow. For in every tear shed, in every secret finally revealed, I found the strength to believe that even the darkest legacies could give way to the tender light of truth. As dusk deepened into night, I stood at the threshold of the lavender fields, feeling the cool night air embrace me. I felt the pulse of the earth beneath my feet steady and timeless, and I knew that my journey was far from over. This was not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where the courage to face the past lit the way toward a future reimagined. And so, with my mother's words echoing in my heart and the enduring perfume of lavender surrounding me, I stepped forward, ready to let our legacy live on, not as a tale of vengeance, but as a testament to the eternal possibility of forgiveness and renewal. I woke early one autumn morning to a gentle mist rolling over the lavender fields, the dew still clinging to the delicate blossoms. The events of the past months, the revelations, the painful confrontations, and the stirring of long-buried memories had transformed not only our family, but also the very soul of the farm. I sat on the stone step of our farmhouse, the cold air mingling with the soft perfume of lavender, and felt the echoes of my mother's rebellious spirit and unwavering courage whispering through every petal. It was in these quiet moments of reflection that I realized the legacy left behind was more than just a painful chronicle of secrets and betrayals. It was a call to transform sorrow into healing. Since Antoine's arrest and the subsequent unraveling of everything I had thought I knew every day here has been a journey of rediscovery and reconciliation. My father, Jean-Luc, who had guarded our past with such fierce and silent determination, now sat beside me at the breakfast table. Over a modest meal of fresh bread and strong coffee, he shared with me the deep remorse and melancholy he had harbored all these years. I did what I believed was best, he whispered, his eyes glistening with equal measures of regret and relief. I thought you deserved to grow without the weight of our dark past. In his soft voice, I heard both the fading echoes of a burdened soul and the tentative promise of forgiveness. Together, we began to bridge the gap that our shared sorrow had erected piece by piece, word by word. Inspired by the intense desire to heal both myself and the remnants of my family, I took refuge in writing. I poured my memories, my pain, and my newfound understanding into the pages of a manuscript that sought to tell our story, not as a tale of revenge and bitterness, but as a testament to resilience and truth. With every sentence that flowed from my pen, the burdens of secrecy that had once strangled us began to dissipate. I recalled my mother's final letter, the raw passion in her words that unveiled a world of radical defiance beneath her tender exterior. In that written confession, I discovered a woman who dared to challenge the oppressive forces that ruled her days, and in the process sowed the seeds of hope for a brighter future. Afternoons found me wandering the familiar paths that intertwined with the farm. I would slow my pace along the rows of lavender, stopping to trace a finger over velvety petals, as if to capture a fleeting echo of my mother's indomitable spirit. The fields, once a silent witness to our family's hidden tragedies, now pulsed with a vibrant mixture of sorrow and hope. I often thought, as the Normandy sun dipped low in the sky and set the fields ablaze with gold and violet, that every bloom was a silent testament to the sacrifices of those who had come before me, and a promise that the darkness could give way to healing light. One crisp evening, as the sky melted into streaks of crimson and indigo, I found myself returning to the place that held my mother's resting memory. The small cemetery, nestled at the edge of the property, was quiet and solemn, a peaceful archive of lives interwoven with courage, love, and regret. Kneeling before her modest grave, I laid a single lavender sprig upon the weathered stone. "Mama," I whispered, my voice both choked with longing and emboldened by newfound understanding, "I promise to carry your truth forward. I will honor the fight you began, and in doing so ensure that our family's story is never silenced by fear again." In that intimate communion with her spirit, I felt a profound release, a surrender and acceptance that allowed my heart to both grieve and celebrate the power of rebellion and resilience. The process of reconnecting with my past also led to unexpected new beginnings. Local historians and activists, those captivated by the murmurings of our family's secret history, approached me with encouragement and offers to help document the underground movement my mother had once been part of. Their genuine interest taught me that our personal saga was in truth a reflection of a larger struggle for justice and freedom. In sharing my narrative with the community, I began to see our legacy not solely as a curse, but as a beacon for those who had long fought against silencing oppression. In hushed meetings held in the farmhouse's parlor, where the old oak table became an altar to shared sorrow and hope, I listened as neighbors recounted similar struggles, their voices resonating with determination. Together, we found solace and strength in the collective resolve to transform the past into a future free of silence. As the weeks turned into months, the farm itself underwent a metamorphosis. I decided to open its weathered doors to the world, transforming parts of the property into a sanctuary where history, art, and activism intertwined. Lavender festivals now celebrated not only the raw beauty of Provence, but also our family's tumultuous journey, an invitation to embrace both pain and hope. In the soft din of community, amid the vibrant chatter of visitors and the quiet contemplation of those drawn to truth, I discovered that transparency was the greatest tribute I could offer to both my mother and my father. The souls who had lived in the shadows of secrets were finally free to live in the open, their scars transformed into emblems of perseverance. Throughout this process, I learned the true essence of forgiveness. Forgiving my father for his long-held silence, forgiving Geneviève for the secrets she believed necessary to protect us, and most of all, forgiving myself for the relentless pursuit of answers that once felt like an act of betrayal against those I loved. In relinquishing the chains of vengeance, I found that the violence of the past softened, dissolving into the gentle murmur of the wind that rustled through the lavender. I began to understand that our family's truth was not defined by the darkness we endured, but by the way we chose to rise above it, to honor those who fought, sacrificed, and loved fiercely. On a final luminous autumn afternoon, as I sat at the window of my small study, my manuscript nearly complete, I marveled at how far I had come. The story that I had nurtured from a raw, painful secret had transformed into a narrative of hope, a living legacy that intertwined my past with my future. In that moment, I understood that the essence of life was not to be defined solely by the wounds of yesterday, but by the healing that each new dawn brought. The lavender, with its steadfast blooms and enduring fragrance, had taught me that even the most scarred earth could yield beauty, provided it was given a chance to breathe in the light. And so, standing amidst the fading light and gentle whispers of the fields that have defined my life, I welcome the future with open arms. The journey of truth, as painful as it may be, has shown me that in every ending lies the seed of a new beginning. The lavender will bloom again, each blossoming a promise that our legacy, reborn from blood and tears, will forever illuminate the path to redemption.